guys. So today, the shop doesn't have a coat rack and it's freezing outside, so constantly coming in and have nowhere to hang any of our coats. So I'm going to build a coat rack. I have a ton of pressure treat 2x lumber laying around everywhere, just offcuts that I haven't gotten a chance to throw away. Things that are a foot. This 2x8 here, probably 2.5, 3 feet. So I'm just going to take some leftover scrap wood, mill it up, cut it up, and try to make a coat rack out of it. And I'll do a little build video and let me know what you guys think.
Okay, so here I'm just going to mill down everything in the planer to about 3/4 of an inch.
Hey guys, so like I said, well, I'm new to this, right? So my GoPro battery died right as I was in the middle of planing everything down and milling up all the lumber, and I didn't notice it, so I kind of missed a lot of what happened. I went to check something on the camera and realized it hadn't been recording through most of that. And I actually got a lot of the project done. So here's kind of what's going on here. If you can see that. So that 2x8 that I had, I split in half. I did 2/3 and 1/3. So I'm about 6 inches down here, and I'm about 3 inches up here. The thickness of the entire coat rack is 1.25 inches. So I cut a bunch of 1.25 by 1.25 kind of spindles to fit in between here. Squared everything up, and then just came back and put some glue on both ends. It's gonna have some side pieces and everything, so this is just gonna sit in clamps now until tomorrow. And then these are the side pieces here. You can see that. So I got 2 of those, and each one of those is gonna go on the end, kind of like that, and then that'll create a shelf for the top of it to have 2 of one on each side, and then the back here, and I'll throw like a piece of plywood or something like that on the back of that. So it'll be a shelf, and then probably 4 or 5 coat hooks down that 6-inch stretch at the bottom.
So here I'm just going to run it through the table saw and square off both ends with the miter gauge, and then run it through the table saw one more time and square off the top half. Here I'm going to put the entire glued up piece into the pipe clamp vise and just give it a good sand. Start with 40 grit on the palm sander all the way down to about 80 to 100 grit, and then a third time again at 220 grit, and then use sandpaper on a sanding block to get all those pieces in between, and again do each one of those with each grit. So now I'll just start by pre-drilling a couple holes in the sides of each of the side pieces and driving in a couple of 2.5-inch screws just to hold it all together. Now I'll measure and cut the top shelf out of a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. And again, I'll pre-drill into the top shelf and add some 1.5-inch screws and a little bit of glue just to hold everything together nice and tight. And here I'll plane down a 2x4 to 3/4 of an inch and rip it into 3/4 inch strips to use for the trim around the top shelf. And I'll use a miter saw sled to make those miters and fasten it together with glue and brad nails. For this project I used a dark walnut stain, just that I had laying around in the shop that I had used on the cabinets from prior, and gave that one coat and it was good to go. So my overall distance in between the two outside pieces was 35 inches, so I split that in between 5, seeing as how I have 4 coat hangers. And looking back, I think there's one thing I would have changed, and that would have been to, divide 35 by by 5 to get my 4 even spaces, which gives me about 7. I would have split that 7 up in half again and started 3.5 inches in from each side and spaced it out a little bit more.
Okay guys, so for today's video, I did the bookshelf, or sorry, the coat rack, and in order to hang it, I want to use a French cleat system. So I'm going to show you guys how I would do that. So basically a French cleat is cutting a 45-degree bevel on the back piece that's going to go on the back of whatever you're hanging, and then that same 45-degree cut, I'm going to use this piece of plywood. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut a 45-degree through it, put one half on the back of the coat rack and the other half on the wall, and then you'll see that the bevels actually slide into each other, and it's a really strong way of holding things. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that here, and I'll show you how it works. So this piece here, about 7 inches. It's a little thick. Then I cut it down to 6, and then when I cut it in half at the bevel, each piece would be about 3, and that just seems like a good measurement for me. So I actually have another throat insert that cuts 45s. Go ahead and drop that in there. So I'm just going to turn my table saw to 45-degree cut. Raise the blade up a little bit. And like I said, this is 6 inches, so move this over. Okay, so here's the install of the French cleat. Line these 2 center marks up. I'm going to keep this just below these spindles here so that you don't see it. And then just drive a couple screws in. Okay, so if you guys can see this, now on the back of the coat rack, that bevel is facing out kind of like that. So then the opposite piece will then be mounted to the wall. And this coat rack will slide in there and sit on it just like that, and that'll hold it up. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but what I did was just screw this bevel, the angle coming up like this. Then that other bevel will slide back into here. Just put it on the wall and leveled it. Alright, so that's it installed. If you can get back here and see. Try and get you guys a good angle. So there, that's you can see that bevel. So the top one there is on the back of the coat rack, and the bottom one is the one that's fastened right to the wall, and it just kind of slides in there like that. And that thing it's pretty strong. Right on, hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like button, help me out. Thanks.